Hi there and welcome to Art with Mrs. G. In today's lesson I show you how to create pattern fish using pencils and watercolour. And the focus is very much on creating pattern and texture. Even though we are creating some imaginative patterns on our fish today, we need to know what the shape of fish bodies look like so that they're vaguely realistic. So to do that, we need to look at some pictures of fish. This is an Atlantic cod. This is a round fish, and they tend to have a round body in the middle which narrows into a tail with broad head and gills. Here is a haddock and here is a sea bass, and you might have tried any of these three with your fish and chips in England. However, it is unlikely that you will find yourself eating these beautiful angelfish. Then there are flatfish, such as this plaice and sole. They have flattened bodies with fins located around the edges, and the eyes are not on each side, they're either left-eyed or right-eyed, depending which side the eyes end up on. At this point, I encourage you to look up the artwork of David Miller, a Lancashire artist who now lives in West Wales. He paints mostly British wildlife, usually in oil pastels, and loves to travel around getting inspiration for his work. He was inspired to paint fish by catching sticklebacks on the local boating lake when he was a young boy, and then he moved on to snorkelling, and eventually he scuba dived with fish, and now he says he spends most of his time face to face with fish somewhere. Now we know what real fish actually look like, let's draw some. Now, one of the problems with drawing animals is that you start drawing it and it doesn't fit on the page. So you've got to get the right size and proportion, and you want to leave a bit of space round the edge. So find the middle of your page and think, right, which side am I going to put the tail? I'm going to need slightly more space on this side because I need to fit the tail in. So I'm going to move my centre point over and mark it gently on the page. Okay, so always sketch lightly. Now that's going to be the centre of a round body on my angelfish, which I've decided to draw. So I'm going to mark the top and the bottom of the fish to show how wide it's going to be. Okay, and then I put my fingers there, 2 or 3 fingers each side, and I think, right, I don't want to draw in that. I want to leave space for my scenery around it. So I probably want the front of the fish to be about there and the tail to finish about here. Okay, so let's now get the round body of this angelfish-like creature on my page. So sketch it on lightly and get that nice fat body, as fat as you like. Now we are slightly inventing this creature, so don't worry it's not completely accurate. There's the end of my tail, so I now narrow it and I go up to the end of my tail and try and do that on the opposite side in a fairly similar fashion. So there's my wavy tail. Now, angelfish have got quite a beaky mouth, so I put that on there with another beaky bit above. There we go. And then we need to add their beautiful fins, which is why I've chosen them. So I don't want to go off the page again. I probably want to stop about there. So I'm going to curve up from the middle of the body to a point, and then just in the middle of the tail here, take a wavy line up to the tip, okay? And about the same place opposite, a wavy line down, slightly longer tail underneath, not exactly opposite here, a little bit further back, because there's 2 fins below. So we curve this one down here and flick off. So I've still got space around the edge. And then they have another tiny little fin just here, which is why I left a space. So leave a finger space. So just the other side of the halfway line, we add another curving, trailing, beautiful fin. So there we have the basic structure of our angelfish, a round fish. Let's add on the eye, which is level with the middle of the beak, really there, the beaky bit. So nice eye, we're going to darken that when we paint it or draw it, and then leave a white circle around it. And then they have the gills through which they breathe. And actually, you can't see it very well in photos, but they have a tiny little fin here, which helps to keep them balanced and redirect them in the water. Time to decide your colours and patterns. So I'm going to divide the body colour off there, and I'm going to have some lovely lines going down the tail. And again, I'm going to have some colour on each fin about there. And then I'm going to finish it off with some beautiful lines. And I am actually looking at a picture of a fish. You can't see it, it's on my computer screen, whilst I'm drawing this. So I'm loosely basing it on the real fish. That's what's inspiring my patterns. So I've got a pattern there, and I think I'm going to go with some lines across the body like this, onto which I'm going to put my creative patterns. So I'm going to have some bands going around this to make it look a bit fatter, I think, like that. But I am going to develop some patterning on them. So I think I'm going to go for some triangles, which look a bit scale-like. So this is going to be the pattern that I develop on this fish. So it's a combination of real and imaginative work. Time to choose your colours, so get your watercolour paints out or your pencils. I'm going to go for a lovely pink. I just test it on a piece of scrap paper to make sure I'm happy with the colour first. So palest colours first, and I'm going to have the background of the fish in this lovely pale pink. Now, if you haven't got paints, just use your colouring pencils. Don't forget to turn your page around so that you can fit your brush into the holes and have nice neat edges. I've chosen a pinky red colour to go round the eye and on the stripes of my fish, and you can see me turning the page to make sure I get a nice neat edge with the tip of the brush. Oh, and by the way, I did swap to a smaller brush to paint these little stripes. Have a tissue or cloth on hand for dabbing off excess paint. I add a darker purple on the fins. Here you see me adding a lovely turquoisey blue to the mouth of the fish and just underneath the eye, maybe a little touch at the tip of the fins. I build up those slightly transparent angelfish fins with pale blue and then the darker turquoise and a bit of purple and a bit of pink. But I make sure I leave some white on it so they look transparent. Do a similar thing for the tail. You may need to wait for the paint to dry before you can put a darker colour on top, which is what I'm doing here with the darker blue. I decided to use yellow in my stripes as it's a nice contrasting colour to purple. Now to add the finer detail, which is easier with pencil, but you could carry on painting with a small brush. So I'm going to darken the eye for starters. I don't want it just to be black, and it's nice to leave a little white reflection dot in it. So I'm going to put some blue in it too and just outline these things and make sure that they show up well, including around this little pale fin here. So just making things show up a little bit more and adding to the pattern. Here I'm colouring the triangles in my blue and turquoise to make a nice strong pattern on the fish. Use your pencils to add darker lines to the fin in a nice flicky style so that they're paler at the end. Time to do some background. So if you've got a paintbrush, enjoy it. So you make whichever C-type patterns you like in the background. I'm going to use some greens and blues wiggling away. I've got to be a little bit careful not to go over my painting, especially as I think some of my pencils might have been watercolour pencils. I don't want it too dark around the fish. I do want it to show up. And now I'm wetting my page. Now, if you've got watercolour paper, you can do this. I'm going to show you a little trick to get a water effect, to get all the little speckles in the water. Right, so my page is pretty wet. Grab the salt from the kitchen, sprinkle it onto your wet paint, and as you can see, bit of magic, you get this nice scattery effect in the water. Look at that. You can go on to add seaweed, corals and bubbles to this picture when it's dry and you've shaken the salt off. I'll just quickly show you how to draw a more cod-like round fish. So again, mark the middle of your page. Make sure that you've got space at each end. Think about how wide you want the body. So there's the top and the bottom. So this is going to be the nice fat body bit in the middle here. And with the cod, it comes to a more rounded head like that, with a little mouth mark, and the eye quite low down again with that white circle around it that fish tend to have. And then we narrow into the tail here, and then you add your split tail on the end. So draw yours more gently than I'm doing. This is just so you can see it. Then we have this fin, a slightly tatty looking fin on the top there. Another little one at the bottom. Then the side or pectoral fin. There we go. And then you've got the second fin underneath to steer it. There we go. So that's the basic fish shape, leaving space around the edges. And now you go on to add your colour. I've used pale yellow, then a bit of orange and pink and even red. And then I've gone on to develop the pattern in the stronger reds and pinks. And then, of course, I've developed it in pencil and put the background scenery in and used a bit of salt at the end for fun. And the last thing I've done when it's dried is put my corals and my bubbles on and my seaweed. I hope, like me, you've managed to create some lovely fish today. And if you did, please like my video, share it with a friend and subscribe to my channel. And I hope to see you again soon. Bye!